A very good morning to those of you in the UK and good afternoon to those of you in Hong Kong and the region. A warm welcome to this webinar titled Reinvent and Resurge, Opportunities for UK Creative Businesses in Hong Kong and Asia Pacific. This webinar is co-presented by InvestHK and the UK Department for International Trade. It is supported by the British Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. We will be recording this session and we will share it with you all afterwards. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Nick Heath, Director General for Trade and Investment, UK Department for International Trade, Hong Kong. We will play a short video before Nick speaks. Thank you.
There are lots of well-known British exports from animation. I think we're known for good, strong artistic skills.
We're working on a show that has been broadcast in China. They wanted to take the character they had to make a series that could work anywhere in the world. They came to us because they wanted our kind of storytelling, our kind of creativity. We've had a lot of help from the government to make sure we're meeting the right people and making the right projects coming back to the UK.
If we can, you can. Search.
Exporting is great.
Thank you very much indeed, Emily, and thank you all for joining. Good morning to all of you in the UK. It is 5 o'clock here in Hong Kong, so good afternoon to all of you who are here with us in Hong Kong. My name is Nick Heath. I'm the Director General for the Department for International Trade here in Hong Kong. And I hope for those of you in the UK, you'll all be aware of the Department for International Trade. We're the UK government body that supports British exporters to export abroad to markets across the world, including to Hong Kong and Macau. But also we're the bit of the British government that encourages investment into the United Kingdom as well. I want to talk a little bit at the beginning of this morning's webinar about the exciting opportunities here in Hong Kong for UK creative industries. And there are 3 points that I want to make. The first is I think this is a market that really knows and respects UK creative content and design. The second is that I think there is a considerable effort underway from the Hong Kong government and from the Hong Kong business community to develop the creative industries here in Hong Kong, which provides a lot of opportunities for UK companies. And the third is that this is a market linked very closely to China across the border, where there are considerable economic opportunities and there is considerable investment, which is worth tapping into as a part of a future plan for all of your businesses. So let me start then by just talking a little bit about the awareness of and I think admiration for British creativity and design that exists here in Hong Kong. That clearly has a historical basis because of our historic relationship with Hong Kong. But those links of people to people mean that many Hong Kongers have studied in the UK, they've travelled widely in the UK, they are consumers of UK culture and media. And that gives us, I think, a great advantage, along with the English language, in a whole range of different creative industries. I was at the launch last night of the Knowledge of Design Week, which is a major event every year here in Hong Kong. And that launch included speakers from across the world, but they were heavily represented by British design thinkers, British design academics, who were showcasing where their thinking was about global design for a Hong Kong audience. And I think that representation just sort of signifies really, just in one little event, the interest in and respect for UK creative talent that there is in Hong Kong. So you start, I think, from a very good place and a very established sort of brand for the UK here. The second thing I wanted to just flag is that the Hong Kong government, to their great credit, have invested, I think, a considerable amount in the creative industries here in Hong Kong. There are a range of bodies that are involved in supporting the creative industries in Hong Kong. They include the Hong Kong Design Centre, which I mentioned earlier, Create Hong Kong, who also give out government grants to design and creativity bodies here in Hong Kong. And there are trade and investment promotion bodies, both which are represented, I think, today. So InvestHK would support people setting up their businesses here. The Hong Kong Trade and Development Council would support Hong Kong exporters to think about partnerships in other countries, including the UK. So There are a range of bodies that are supporting the creative industries here in Hong Kong and growing the sector. There's also been a large proportion of government financial support as well. So over the last 10 years, there's been £200 million to support the Create Smart initiative, a Hong Kong government initiative to do creative related products. There's a film development fund, so many of you will know the strength of the Hong Kong film industry already, but £150 million has been injected over recent years into the film development fund to support Indigenous Hong Kong talent and facilities that bring in things that UK companies may also be able to contribute as well. Even just in the last year, the last Hong Kong government budget announced more than £500 million on cultural development for this year. That's a considerable budget for a territory of 7 million people, and it recognises, I think, a considerable effort to grow the sector here in Hong Kong, both at government level with new museums. There's a new cultural district in West Kowloon with some really exciting museums that are developing, but also the private sector, and to grow in an Indigenous creative industry which will benefit from collaboration with and products from the UK. So the second point really is just there's a lot of support and there's a real effort here to grow the sector, which I think is really interesting and exciting for British companies to consider when they're looking at where to go in the world. The third point I wanted to make is that, and this is a bit of a platitude, but the reality is that the economic weight of Hong Kong and southern China is going up exponentially in the world, and we, I think, as UK companies and UK government have a great opportunity to contribute and benefit from that economic success story. So last year during the pandemic, the People's Republic of China was the only economy globally to grow. The Hong Kong economy is scheduled to rise considerably already this year, 7.8% in the first 3 months they've grown. And so as the pandemic recedes here as elsewhere, I think the economic opportunities in Hong Kong and in Macau and indeed in southern China are considerable, and ones that UK companies need to consider as they plan their global strategies. This is a place where there isn't just a respect for and an admiration for British creative talent, but there's also an ability to pay for it. And this is a part of the world where you can win contracts and you can do business. I was talking to a property developer yesterday who was telling me about a new installation by Paul Coxage at one of his developments. I don't know what he paid for it, but it's a major piece of art, major piece of creative design, and there are numerous new buildings being developed all over the city. So if you're in a physical design space, that's a very obvious opportunity, but it's emblematic, I think, of a wider opportunity here in Hong Kong. So just to wrap those up again, this is a place that knows and respects and admires UK creative talent. There's a range of government support that's developing the industry here in Hong Kong. And finally, I think just looking at the macroeconomics and the opportunity here, this is a great place to get exposure for your business in the wider Chinese market. And this is a part of the world where I think you want to be represented going forward in the next few years. Finally, before I finish, let me just say a word about travel. So I know what I would really love to do at the end of this would be to issue a call to arms and say, come to Hong Kong and come and see for yourselves. And obviously that's not really possible because of the pandemic. That is frustrating, and I feel that as much as you do, and I'd love to welcome you. But we do have a team here that are here to assist you, and I'd really encourage you to get in touch. So Chloe Law, who will be speaking later, leads our creative practice here at the consulate, and she's a real expert on all things creative in Hong Kong. Please do make use of her knowledge and contacts as you consider how we could support you to develop your business here. And Stephen's team, Stephen and Andrew, who will be speaking shortly, Invest Hong Kong, are great partners for the consulate and for Department of International Trade. If your business is about relocating or setting up practice here, then they can really help you with that as well. I look forward to the day when I can have you all on a plane and here and we can meet in person. But for now, I think the opportunities are really considerable, and there are still lots of good ways of getting in touch. So I hope this is a really successful webinar. I hope you benefit from it. Please do give us feedback. We'd love to keep improving these for clients going forward. But thank you for joining. I look forward to a really fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Nick, for that introduction and for sharing a bit more on how the DIT in Hong Kong can support any company wanting to move over to Hong Kong and expand in the region. I'd now like to introduce you to Stephen Phillips, who's Director General of Investment Promotions for Invest Hong Kong, and also Doris Fong, Head of Creative Industries, Invest Hong Kong. So Stephen will share some updates with you on Hong Kong and its role as the ideal gateway to China and the region. Doris will also talk to you about the changing landscape of the creative industries and what the outlook and the opportunities look like.
Emily, firstly, thank you very much indeed, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. It really is a great pleasure to be joining you all. First of all, I'd like to say I very much agree with the observations of Nick. And really would reinforce everything that he said. As Emily said, over the next few minutes, I'm going to share the bigger picture landscape with you and sort of Hong Kong's positioning within Asia as a great gateway to a whole range of different opportunities. I'll share with you a little bit about the developments of the Greater Bay Area, a really vibrant region in southern China. And then Doris will talk to you in much more detail about the opportunities in the creative industries. So I'm now going to share some slides with you and quickly go through those as I speak. So the first thing that I'd really like to talk about is a little bit of Hong Kong's advantages. And first of all, the major point that I'd make is Hong Kong is a route to growth opportunities. In a post-pandemic world, obviously we're seeing China already motoring, as Nick has said, and the Hong Kong economy swinging back into action, and the rest of Asia, given its economic dividend from the demographics, will probably outpace the rest of the world in many years to come. And Hong Kong has a phenomenal role to play there. First of all, Hong Kong really sits slap bang at the center of the region. And for businesses, what that means is that you can access practically every major city across Asia within 4 hours flying of Hong Kong. Half of the world's population lives within 5 hours of the city. And looking at that little map of part of the globe, we've got some circles there, and the image that I like to try to create is one of ever increasing concentric circles of opportunity. Hong Kong itself, then the Greater Bay Area that I'll touch on, the whole of China, the whole of Asia, and indeed for some companies, indeed some international companies, they use Hong Kong for their global operations. The second part of what is so unique about Hong Kong is its very unique positioning as a special administrative region of China under the one country, two systems formula. For businesses, at one level, that means we have a legal system that is based upon English common law, so familiar to all of you in the UK. We're also one of the world's largest international financial centres, and obviously that's very important when you're looking for growth capital. And the economy in Hong Kong, I would describe it as actually very similar to the UK. It's a mature, well-developed economy. So you've got very sophisticated businesses on one hand and discerning consumers on the other. Then we've got a very pro-business government. Sort of very much a laissez-faire open economy. What manifestation of this is our simple and competitive tax system, where corporate profit tax, corporation tax in UK terms, is just 16.5%. And actually the first 2 million Hong Kong dollars, or about £200,000, is only taxed at 8.25%. Actually, though, I personally think the beauty is the simplicity. We don't have any of the complicated taxes, VAT, capital gains tax, withholding tax, and so forth. So it really does minimize the burden on your finance and accounting teams. Maybe I could just go into a little bit more detail as to also why it is such a friendly business environment. We've got a great supply of highly international talent here in the city. So you'll find people from all parts of the world with multiple language skill sets, very much understanding different business cultures across the region. And we also have quite a liberal regime to bring in international talent, including from the UK, of course. Hong Kong probably is the most free and open market in the world. Basically, there are no barriers to trade and investment, no FX restrictions, no capital controls. That accessibility to the rest of the region in normal times is phenomenal, and in normal times, connectivity to the UK is very good, possibly up to 8 or 9 flights a day to the UK in normal times. But Hong Kong's also a great place to live. Many of you might think of Hong Kong as that concrete jungle. You see all of the images of the skyscrapers and so forth. But much of Hong Kong is actually country park. We've got stunning mountains and beautiful beaches. So both working and playing in Hong Kong is really good. That rule of law, the common law system, very important to international businesses, underpinned by an independent judiciary. And for many businesses, including obviously in the creative industries, Hong Kong has got a world-class intellectual property protection environment. Again, very, very familiar to those of you from the UK. And these are just some of the reasons why Hong Kong is such a magnet for international businesses. At Invest Hong Kong, we do a couple of surveys each year, and some of the summary findings are here. So we've got over 9,000 international companies that call Hong Kong home, of which 1,500 or so use Hong Kong for regional headquarters. So that's multi-site operations across the whole of Asia. And this just reinforces this point that Hong Kong is much more than just Hong Kong itself. It's that access to those bigger growth opportunities. You can see that the UK is very well represented here for legacy reasons, but also continuous new investment, our 4th largest source of investment. The startup scene in Hong Kong is also really vibrant and growing very quickly. So the number of startups is up over 50% since 2017. And even last year, obviously the most difficult year that any of us have ever experienced in our business lives, we saw the number of startups in Hong Kong grow by 6%. And again, the early stage, the startup community is highly international. Over a quarter of founders come from outside Hong Kong, and the UK is right up there in the sources of those founders. The sectors are very different to the traditional sectors in Hong Kong, and it won't surprise you that they're more tech-driven. Fintech, a particularly vibrant sector, given our role as an international financial centre. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Greater Bay Area, which I think is something that might astound you in terms of its scale, and Nick alluded to it. So the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, its official title, but most people call it GBA, is a national policy priority. And what it sees is 9 cities in Guangdong province, plus the 2 special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau, forming an economic cluster that is focused on innovation and financial services. And really, what it's about is scale, density, connectivity, innovation, and with the capital to fuel the growth. So you've got population standing at 86 million. Actually, the recent census has shown that that's shot up by 14 million just over the last few years. The region is already an economy of about 1.6 trillion US dollars. That makes it roughly the 11th largest economy in the world. So it's bigger than Australia, bigger than Spain already. Looking to 2030, it may well be in its own right the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. So hence why I would say this is too big to ignore for any business actually globally. And this is slightly more fun as a slide in terms of giving you a feel for the scale of GBA already. So if you look, for instance, as H&M stores in GBA 71, Tokyo Bay Area 25, Silicon Valley 14. Let's look at Apple, home territory 18, already 11 in GBA, 6 in Tokyo Bay Area. And you see it again for Mercedes, LVMH, and so forth. So I think this just gives you a feel for the depth of the consumer market within GBA. Now, I mentioned connectivity being part and parcel of what is going to fuel this growth within GBA. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is the high-speed rail network opening up. So you can now get from Hong Kong to Shenzhen in just 15 minutes, and from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, the capital of Guangdong province, in just 48 minutes. At the same time, we've seen bridges from the eastern side to the western side of the Pearl River Delta open up the entirety of the region. So now there's a bridge from Hong Kong to Macau and Zhuhai. What that means for business is that before, when you had to travel, if you went by road, it would be 4 or 5 hours, particularly important, obviously, for people moving product. Now it is only 45 minutes. So this transportation network really unleashing the connectivity between the cities, and it roughly means between any city pair, the maximum time of travel is only roughly 1 hour. So finally, I'd just like to give you the sort of Hong Kong positioning within GBA, but by extension, Hong Kong's positioning within the wider context of Asia. So there's the B2C opportunities with those wealthy consumers. I just note my slide hasn't been updated here, but also B2B opportunities. Guangdong is home to some of China's most innovative enterprises, particularly if you look in Shenzhen. But the opportunity is beyond GBA. There's a lot of outbound investment from GBA to the rest of the world. So these fast-growing mainland enterprises who have a demand for creative industries services. And I'm sure Doris will go into more detail here. But then there's also the changing trade and investment flows within Asia. So traditionally, we thought more about east-west flows, but with RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, we will see Asia move even more quickly. And certainly what we're seeing in our work at Invest Hong Kong is this trade and investment corridor between the fast-growing economies of ASEAN and GBA being very, very high potential. So when you're looking at figuring out the opportunities for your business in this part of the world, don't just think about the UK Asia access, think about the new accesses emerging within the region. I'll leave it at that, and finally I'll just put my contact details there if you'd ever like to get in touch. But thank you very much, and I will pass over to Doris now.
Thank you, Stephen. So in the next 10 minutes, I would like to share with you the changing landscape of the creative industries in Hong Kong, especially during the pandemic in the last 12 months, and also to look at the outlook and the opportunities that you can find in Hong Kong. I'll also share my screen now. First of all, I would like to give you just a brief overview about the opportunities of creative industries and how they use Hong Kong as gateway to tackle the APAC and China market. Taking a look at some of the key sectors here, we have design, digital marketing, multimedia, entertainment. For example, all these kinds of companies, they also look at Hong Kong as a regional hub. So for design, we have over 6,000 design companies here in Hong Kong. And obviously, mainland China is the biggest export market for Hong Kong design company. And for digital marketing, also we have so many brands and also international digital marketing agencies, big and small, that are located here in Hong Kong. And therefore, they can be close to key decision makers to formulate strategies and their campaigns. And looking at the art market, Hong Kong has a very strong art market despite the pandemic. And actually last year, Hong Kong is the second largest art market in art auction sales, actually overtaking London for the first time. And many of these art galleries and art consultancies, art auction houses are based in Hong Kong to attract high net worth individuals and also to build connections with artists and cultural institutions. Nick mentioned about the West Kowloon Cultural District, and at the end of this year, actually a big museum, M+ is going to open, and it will open up a lot of opportunities for cultural collaborations with artists and other museums. For architecture company, actually they like to use Hong Kong also to oversee their regional operation because Hong Kong is a strategic location, even though many of those projects may not happen in Hong Kong, but in China or the rest of the region. But the photo I've chosen here actually is a mega project here in Hong Kong. It's the CreaTech Sports Park. And this mega venue is designed by one of our architects, internationally very famous architect firms called Populous. And this is a venue that can accommodate 50,000 audience and people. And not just one venue, but many other venues, indoor and outdoor as well. So it will be opened in 2023, but actually now is the time for collaborations and partnerships and negotiations with the CreaTech Sports Park. So if you have wonderful projects, festival ideas, because it's not just a sports park, but also a mega entertainment complex. And any entertainment proposals that you have, feel free to contact us later on. We're happy to make some introductions for you. And also in terms of digital, especially there are so many changes during the pandemic time, and digital entertainment, including gaming, has become, of course, very popular. And many international gaming companies use Hong Kong to launch or promote the new products, find distributors or partners in the region. And there is this art tech, or what UK call it CreaTech. There are also opportunities for a lot of CreaTech companies here in Hong Kong because of the growing demand for these kinds of immersive experience. And I will talk about that later on. First of all, let's take a look at some of these more vibrant markets during these more turbulent times. We mentioned that Hong Kong is the second largest global art market, and Art Basel actually just staged their feasible fair finally in May in Hong Kong and attracted nearly 30,000 visitors. And the digital program Art Basel Live Hong Kong, featuring a lot of online viewing rooms, VIP walkthroughs, public walkthroughs, all live streamed from Hong Kong with daily broadcasts and new virtual experience. Imagine they beam the overseas galleries through hologram to meet with some of the collectors here in Hong Kong. So that's a very interesting new kind of virtual experience. And I must say the art market has undergone a very successful digital transformation. And just look at the online sales last year, it has doubled and account for 25% of the global art market's total value. And this is the first time that a share of the e-commerce market has exceeded that of the general retail. And it's not surprising given the pandemic. And also the phenomenal growth of NFT in art. And Hong Kong will have its first digital art fair in Asia, featuring new media art and NFT as well in September. I mentioned about the CreaTech and Art Tech. Hong Kong government has set aside 100 million, which is around 90 million pounds. That has been set aside by the government to support the art tech projects here in Hong Kong. And we're going to build the East Kowloon Cultural Center, which is set to open in 2023, that will foster the development of art tech. And before that, we don't have to wait until 2023, right? Before that, other institutions like the Science Park, they already have new experience center that feature new art technology, and also Cyberports. They also have other programs, including the incubation programs, to support the technology startups. So virtual, augmented, mixed reality are the newest disruptors, not only in the art world. Actually, they are very popular already in retail, commercial, real estate, and the entertainment sectors. For the entertainment, because of the acceleration in digital entertainment and the virtual experience has led to a lot of demand in entertainment technologies, not only the AR, VR, mixed reality, but also extended reality and virtual production. And I'm sure one of our panel speaker, this guys, they will tell you more about how they bring virtual production and extended reality, these kinds of technologies to Hong Kong and the APAC market. And of course, apart from virtual productions or digital entertainment, OTT is ever popular, it's growing tremendously, even before COVID and even more after COVID. Hong Kong OTT revenue will sustain a rapid growth of 10% annual growth rate, and it will bypass TV by 2024. And therefore, demand for premium services, including high definition content, niche content, or localized content are increasing. And Hong Kong has an advantage, and because it is home to multinational media organizations, including broadcaster, TV channels, and news agencies, and therefore it is a very good platform as a regional hub to collaborate with regional and global clients. And not to mention, we also have a very strong foundation in broadcasting with very good talents in media, content creation, and production. As for digital marketing, because during COVID, which is a really big catalyst for change in brands, and they have to find new ways of connecting with the customer. And in Hong Kong, we have very good and pertinent uptake of the 5G, and the shift in consumer media usage has spurred growth in the digital advertising sector, leading to demand for KOL marketing, KOL streaming. This has become really popular in Asia, especially in mainland China, and other immersive technologies, AI, programmatic tools, video, and social. And Hong Kong ad spend back in January and February this year has rebounded already with a 27% growth, and very strong in social media, mobile, outdoor advertising, and leading the growth charge are industries such as pharmaceuticals, healthcare, CPG, technology, and telecommunications, which is not surprising given the pandemic. And because Hong Kong, as I mentioned, is home to multinational iconic brands and agencies, therefore we are a center of gravity for advertisers and marketers. In terms of digital marketing, of course, many of you may be already playing a lot of games at home or through your mobile during the pandemic. And Hong Kong, despite being a very small market, but we have a very interesting market. We are a regional distribution center for games. And actually our per capita gaming revenue is the third largest revenue per person in the world. It's equivalent to $107 per person. And of course, it's much higher than China, but China has the numbers. But still, we have a very interesting market and also skills and expertise in developing monetization models, product localization, cross-border sponsorships, merchandising partnerships, and especially collaboration with the GBA. So actually, it's quite an impossible task for me to capture all the digital changes and the digital landscape in Hong Kong creative industries in just less than 10 minutes. So I'm giving you a heads up that Invest Hong Kong is doing a digital ecosystem booklet, not just on the creative industries, but also on e-commerce and food services. It's coming up soon in the next 2 quarters. And so if you are interested in knowing more about the Hong Kong digital ecosystem, do register your interest with me fast after the webinar. It is a free publication, so it will give you a lot of information about the recent changes of the digital landscape in Hong Kong. Well, I don't have time to go through the slides, but I think I will have more time to go through with you some of the funding schemes that the government provide for companies in Hong Kong or even international companies that are already based in Hong Kong to tackle and expand the market in the region, in APAC, in China, and the rest of Asia. I will tell you more about these kinds of funding schemes, since now I'm well, this is my contact, and time's up. And I think I will join you in the panel discussion later so that we can tell you more about different kinds of funding scheme. So I can stop share now. So very happy to join you later, and I'll pass it on back to Emily.
Thank you, Doris and Stephen. I thought it was really interesting, and I suppose two kind of key takeaways that I saw from that was, first and foremost, the Greater Bay Area being a key opportunity. That's something we at the Chamber are very focused on and see it as a really exciting opportunity for international business growth. And then Doris, just echoing on what you were saying, I feel that COVID has obviously forced a huge shift in customer demands, which in turn has elevated the need for creativity. So on that note, it kind of leads us really nicely onto our panel discussion. So I'd like to now introduce you all to Andrew Davis, who is Head of Investment Promotions for Invest Hong Kong. He will be leading the panel discussion. So I will now hand you all over to Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed, Emily. Well, that's been a fascinating set of discussions this morning from Nick and Stephen and Doris, detailing the opportunities and advantages of companies based in Hong Kong. Now, I'm Andrew Davis. I'm going to be moderating the panel session today. I head Invest Hong Kong's operations here in the UK after having lived in Hong Kong for some 20 years. If anybody wants to follow up after this webinar, you can find myself or my colleague Jessica Cam on LinkedIn or through our website. If you have any questions for the panel, please pop those into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. I will try to get to all of those during the course of this session. We heard about the opportunities from Department of International Trade, Invest Hong Kong, but really I think what's most interesting is what the companies who've been there and done that. So we've got a very interesting panel discussion for you here on creative industries, an esteemed and experienced bunch of people, and they are Mr. Adrian Kingwell, Chief Executive Officer of Mesolabs, Miss Imogen Short, Chief Creative Officer, Asia Pacific, Write the Talk, Mr. Oliver Corrin, Regional Director, Carder Design, and Mr. Phil Cooksey, Sales Director, EMEA Disguise. We'll also be joined by Miss Chloe Law, Head of Creative Industries for the Department of International Trade, and Doris once again. What I'm going to do is start off by asking the four companies to give a short introduction to themselves and their business. So, first of all, over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adrian Kingwell. Very excited to be here. I'm the founder and CEO of Mesolabs. Mesolabs is an analytics consultancy. Our customers know that only half of their digital marketing is really working, and they want to know which half, and we tell them. We use digital data to tell them which ads, which creative, which customer experiences are working, as well as what's not working. So we help them focus their digital activities and drive more sales through their websites and their apps. Our customers range from banks to travel companies and retailers. And to be honest, anyone that has a website and is looking to sell more online is someone that we help. Mesolabs has been trading for about 15 years in London and growing quite nicely. About 4 years ago, I was invited by a client, HSBC, to come to Hong Kong. And I was hugely impressed by the energy of the city. And I could certainly see the opportunity for us out there. 1 year later, we'd opened an office in WeWork in Causeway Bay. And trading has been good. I wish I could say that it had been great, but with the protests and with the global pandemic, the past year or so has been a bit bumpy. However, we're seeing signs of recovery. Things are bouncing back in the region. I'm very confident that by the end of this year, Asia Pacific as a whole will be 30% of our global revenues. So it was definitely the right move for us, and the future's looking good.
Thank you very much indeed, Adrian. So over to you, Imogen.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I am the Chief Creative Officer for Write the Talk in Asia. We are a storytelling agency headquartered in the UK. We do work in Hong Kong and the US as well. So we use the creative principles of multi-million-dollar television networks to help organizations engage their audiences differently. So if you think about how you feel about your favorite character or story, television series, that's how we want people to feel about the work they do. And we do that using sort of the science and structure of story. And we work across three main areas. So we work with employee engagement heads who are looking at cultural transformation and connecting people to purpose. We look at change management and how we lead people through change. And then we look at story training. So how do we equip leaders and teams to tell their story and to bring people on that journey. So we were founded over a decade ago in the UK, and I've been running the Hong Kong business for 4 years now, as of last week. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that journey with you today.
Thank you very much indeed, Imogen. Now we're going to hear from Mr. Oliver Corrin, Regional Director at Carter Design. Oliver, are you there? Yes.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's great. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, everybody. As you said, my name is Oliver Corrin. I'm the Regional Director for Carter Design. Just a little bit about our business. Carter Design are a strategic interior and branding agency. We were established over 30 years ago with our head office being in the UK. We've now been in Hong Kong for just over 2 years. And so the main part of our business is we specialize in F&B and hospitality. By this, I mean sort of supermarket operators and convenience, going through to restaurants, going through to food halls, quick serve restaurants, and sort of very large scale rollouts. And sort of with the kind of clients that we work with, it's sort of a very breadth, deep range. With clients we've been working with Fortnum & Mason for over 6 years, as well as Harrods, going through to Aldi as well, and with Pret A Manger to Lotte and Shinsegae in South Korea. And sort of when it comes to our base, as I mentioned, we do work internationally with sort of projects globally at the moment. And sort of with this, my own personal journey is I've been in Hong Kong since 2014, where I came over with CADA. And really, I came straight from the UK, and for me, I fell in love with the place. And I decided to stay here after a project had concluded. From there, I traveled, I did live and work in Vietnam to Singapore, but I was brought back to Hong Kong and kept very close contact with CADA, and when we decided to encroach on this journey together to establish the office. Just a little bit why we decided to do it. For us to say, we've been doing projects in South Korea a lot and partly in Asia, but really we wanted to better serve our clients and give them the level and sort of dedication of services that they both all deserve, but also, are sort of required and asked and sort of needed. And Hong Kong itself, I'd say it's a fantastic creative hub. It's got an immensely supportive community here. It really, really does. And as we've heard today, it's got incredible access to some really sort of growth markets from, as we talked about, with China, particularly GBA, but then also the ASEAN region as well. And it's sort of one of those things there. And from our point, the clients really wanted our exposure of working globally and sort of being able to bring that experience and depth and provide it to sort of local, local projects here. And so, so we've gone on that really. And I'd also like to sort of say, lastly, is that for sure, I've been working with Chloe at the Chambers very closely over the past 2 years, as well as the DIT, who have introduced us to many clients in China. And obviously, it's been a fantastic experience. They've been incredibly supportive. And I really think without them, it would be a very, very different 2 years that we've had. As Adrian mentioned, it has been bumpy. But it's sort of, the wheels are turning very much again, and they've been a very big part of that success for us. So thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Oliver. And finally, we'll hear from Phil Cooksey, Sales Director EMEA at Disguise. Good morning, Phil.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, hello everyone, and thanks for having me today. My name is Phil Cooksey, Sales Director for EMEA at Disguise. So I'm going to play our show reel while I give you a bit of an introduction as to who we are. So as this plays, we're a creative design and delivery software platform, anything to do with LED or projection. There's a good chance if you've been to a concert or to a theatre show that the LED or projection was designed and then delivered using Disguise. Major opening ceremonies like the Super Bowl, Eurovision Song Contest, and so it goes on, are often powered by Disguise. The top 10 global touring artists of 2019, the likes of Ed Sheeran and Beyonce and so on, all of their shows were designed in our software and then delivered using our software and our servers as well, our hardware platform. We're one of the TechTrack 100 for the last 3 or 4 years in the UK, and also the European version of that, the top 500. So we still consider ourselves a bit of a startup, but we're fast growing. We have offices all around the world and, of course, in Hong Kong as well. As the pandemic kicked in, we've been working on this extra extension of the software workflow and capability, as Doris mentioned, around virtual production. So this could be a huge and broad range of application, from simple green screen replacement in a TV studio, right through to huge augmented reality spectaculars like you're seeing on the screen now, a hybrid where there's augmented reality during a live concert, as you can see right now, through to films being produced in a virtual way instead of using green screen. And actually, it's a huge spectrum of application, right through to even corporate presentations. Instead of standing in front of a whiteboard or in front of a TV monitor, you could be stood in an LED volume, an LED cube, whereby you can see the content, and you can be delivered into a virtual environment. As you can see here, this guy can actually see the content. This is a corporate conference delivered by SAP. You can see how immersive it is, and this is all delivered using the Disguise software platform, servers and hardware. And every day there's a new invention of how our technology can be used for either creating broadcasts, films, corporate presentations, or actual immersive experiences. So yes, we're seeing, as Doris mentioned, a disruption in the market from traditional technologies, and we seem to find ourselves at the center of that, which is great.
Thanks very much indeed for that. That's really interesting, and thank you all very much for that short introduction. So now, if everybody could turn on their videos and their audio, Chloe and Doris as well, join us all in this room, and I can swap my my screen to gallery view so we can see everyone. That's great. Welcome. And I'm going to start off by asking all the panelists to sort of share your export journey. So from exporting to setting up in Hong Kong. Imogen, do you want to kick us off by saying, you know, how, right, the talk, I remember meeting with Anthony, probably about 5 years ago in the UK, and, you know, hearing him say, you know, there's an opportunity for the company in Hong Kong.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So our export journey was a few years in the making. So we were sort of founded in the UK many years ago, and we're very much a company based on relationships and referrals. And so when a couple of our UK clients moved to Hong Kong, those relationships continued, and the requests for work continued. And so Anthony, my CEO, was flying over to Hong Kong every quarter to sort of maintain those relationships, and really saw the size of the opportunity in Hong Kong. And that's actually how I met Anthony. So we'd catch up every time he sort of visited here, and we'd talk about that sort of mutual opportunity. And eventually we formalized it. And you know, it was very much that sense that you know, if he had a permanent base here, there was really we could grow a very strong business in Hong Kong, which we eventually did. So it wasn't necessarily strategic, but it was very organic in how it sort of unfolded. And I think there's a real beauty in how that those things come together in terms of timing and shared values and opportunity. And I really do think that Hong Kong is the place where that kind of thing happens, you know, in terms of connections and network and and really the creative industry is just sort of exploding and growing over the last couple of years. So it was like the longest job interview I think I've ever had. But then we set up, we sort of we got a desk in WeWork in Wan Chai, and sort of set up the operations. I won't talk about how long it took to set up a bank account. I'm sure people have horror stories in that respect. But I think that's changed. So it's been a real pleasure. For the first 2 years, the Hong Kong business grew exponentially. Yes, it has been tough in terms of protests and COVID, but we've been lucky enough to sort of be able to do our work online and actually to grow our training proposition for leaders across the region. So it's been a real up and down journey, but an incredible one over 4 years.
Great. Adrian, does that sort of mirror your own experience of exporting, coming from the UK to Hong Kong?
Yeah, I think that you're always advised not to step into a new market unless you've got an existing customer that wants to take you there, which gives you something of a soft landing or a soft entry point into the market. For us, it was HSBC, which of course is a very recognizable brand in Hong Kong as it is in the UK, as it is in many countries. So that was really useful for us, particularly when we knocked on other doors around the place to say, hey, we could help you. The usual response would be, well, who else are you working with? And if we could say HSBC, then that was basically our, that was better than our business card. It was the pragmatic kind of issues that the getting set up as a business wasn't that difficult. Didn't take that long. I'd say the UK is very easy to set up a business. Hong Kong is quite easy to set up a business. Other Asian markets are much more difficult. We've tried doing that as well. So in terms of red tape, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't horribly bureaucratic. There was a way through it. Levels of support from people, like yourselves in HKTDC, Invest Hong Kong were very good. So there was always somebody that I could turn to for advice. The only real issue, as has already been said, was around the banking side of things. That was really difficult for us because no bank wants to take you on board unless you've got existing trading history in a geography. That's not exclusive to Hong Kong. That's everywhere you go in the world, it's that. If anybody wanted to start a business from overseas in the UK, they'd struggle to open a business account. It's difficult. So we went with a company called Neat that was one of these fintech startups, which was great to start with. They were the only place that would accept us. Didn't turn out to be the best bank in terms of business bank in the world, and we're now looking to move off them. But that was the only way that we could actually start up and get trading with a Hong Kong bank account at the time. I understand things got a little bit easier since then, but still it is a challenge.
They have done. Yeah. Phil, how does this with the guys coming in, what's it been, a year or so you've been in the Hong Kong market?
Yeah, there was two parts to it. The first one was that there were shows and events being delivered on Disguise before we had a proper presence in the region. House of Dancing Water, for example, in Macau. And so there was a beginning of a familiarity with the Disguise brand, and then slowly but surely we realised not only did we want to have people on the right time zone, but we wanted to have that show of commitment to the region and become a local company, if you like. And actually, from a technology perspective, the market was crying out for some more choice. And so we just needed to come in and do a good job and continue that and start to build up partnerships in the region. We do consider building partnerships rather than building just customers.
Yeah, I think this certainly all of you reflect this depth and very high level of talent in creative industries that comes from the UK. Oliver, I mean, you sort of done this in 2 bites, working, first on where you won a project, which was the redesign of the America Club, and then sort of coming later to set up CADA in Hong Kong.
Absolutely. So that's what I came up for, and say with it that we sort of completed the project. And I think maybe at the time the company itself was it's a confidence thing. It's a big decision to open up an office here and establish yourself. And the idea of all is the growth going to be there? Is there going to be enough business to support us, and kind of all the costs and overheads that come with that? And it very much so, like sort of our journey really was in line with also with the chambers. A lot of myself, but also a lot of the team in the UK was speaking to them a lot and sort of understanding on the right procedures, the way to do it. And obviously they're community connectors. They connect people with other businesses, which is that part of I mentioned about that support. As you say, and really for it is that when we decided to establish the company, one very large thing is we were approached by a sort of quite a large client in Macau to do a project there, a very large scale department store in a new hotel. And really the only way of really actually securing that is by having a presence here. And as Phil said, it's that commitment, which is, with a lot of people is what's necessary. We've been working in South Korea for 10 years and they don't mind the remote part there. They don't mind this, remote working and sort of going out for key meetings. But the likes are finding more so, particularly in China, Hong Kong, and going through to ASEAN as well, like Singapore, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, is they want this on the ground resources at level, and which they say, as was mentioned before, is which they deserve very much so. And I think, one great thing from our point is that we're very much specialists. It's our expertise and why we now have people, coming to us in the region to help them and, with this part there. So it's been, it's been a really fantastic journey, and it's exciting to see where it goes, because I say obviously we've had a slight sort of slowing down, and seeing the growth now, it is a very exciting time.
That's really pleased to hear. I mean, Chloe, DIT along with Invest Hong Kong is a fundamental part of this sort of network, along with the British Chamber. I can't emphasize this enough to anyone in the UK listening of how the three parties are there to support. So you support all these UK companies who come to you on their starting off as an expert journey and then into investment and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So thanks, Andrew. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that we're very proud of a UK business expanding and also branching out in the region through Hong Kong, just like our panelists today. Through our network at DIT of overseas post of over 100 markets, as well as trade advisors UK-based, located at 9 regional offices, we have this massive network of knowledge as well as know-how to share advice and also support to UK business who are thinking of going out to different global markets. DIT provides support for UK businesses wishing to expand into the global market by a few key things. So including support and provide on-the-ground information of different markets, identify potential business partners for them. We really work with them throughout their journey, and we support their in-market visits as well when travel resumes, I should say. So my recommendation is, if you're not currently connected or in conversation with our trade advisors or ITAs in the UK, please go on to great.gov.uk to contact one of them in your region to start the conversation, just to get it going. We are here to help, so please feel free to come to us.
Thanks very much. Now, I mean, we are running up against time. I will run over time, I'm afraid, Doris. So, but I want to ask you all. So, why Hong Kong? Why Hong Kong and not another location in Asia? Phil, do you want to kick off on that?
It's a good question, actually. I think it was a case of talent, accessibility, and the connection with the UK. We did then open a hub in Shanghai as well, and then we have remote workers now in other countries in the region. So we wanted to create a network, and being a fast-growing company, we tend do things all at once with stuff like that as well. But yeah, I think actually because we had a presence there as well already with some of our own partners and customers, that it made sense for us.
Yeah. Adrian?
I think there was a certain kind of familiarity when you go to Hong Kong, that it feels like you're in Asia, but there's a recognizable sense of, if you like, a British legacy that's familiar to us. So that the way of doing business in Hong Kong is really the way it sort of translates. It's quite accessible from a UK point of view. It's not hard work. We've done business also in Japan, where you really have to assimilate yourself to the local business culture. Similarly in South Korea. Singapore is easier, but I'd say of all the Asian countries that we've operated in, Hong Kong is definitely the closest in terms of business culture. So for us, that's what made it easiest. It was familiar.
Yeah, and Imogen, I mean, you've been in Hong Kong some time, so you have a sort of maybe a different perspective there.
Yeah, I guess if I was thinking about why we would come to Hong Kong, or why I would recommend Hong Kong, it's really about this sense of opportunity and connection. I think I was really surprised. I worked sort of in London and then Sydney, and then came to Hong Kong with a financial services company. And when we started with Write the Talk, we were banging on doors to grow the business. And actually the receptiveness of people here to have a conversation with you, and especially senior people, is quite astounding. People are very willing to give up 30 minutes to find out what you do. And if they don't need it immediately, then they'll connect you with someone who thinks who may need what you do. And that connection sort of is exponential. So you sort of get this ripple effects of this network that grows very, very quickly. And so when opportunities do come up, people know who you are. And so I think there's sort of that intangible sense that things can move very, very quickly. And I think, so there's sort of the accessibility to people, but in terms of the geography as well, everyone's in quite close proximity. So you can really have a lot of conversations through the day. And not feel like you're rushing between them, because you're never far away from the next meeting, I think. And I don't know that you could really say the same thing about London. I think, I've had days where I was sort of doing between 6 and 8 meetings a day. Exactly. And I think, it's just that sense of people are very willing and open to having conversations, and that leads to more conversations, and that leads to business. But also, it's really accessible in terms of how much you can actually achieve in a day, and how many people you can speak to. So there is that sense of it's fluid, it's vibrant, and it's just full of opportunity. And I think that's what really, for me, differentiates Hong Kong from other cities.
Yeah, well, I agree. I have to say, after 20 years living there, I agree with that completely. I mean, one of the things you mentioned there, and Oliver, that leads me to you, with you both talked about the networks and the accessibility between people in Hong Kong. That would be something I would imagine helped Carter finalize on Hong Kong as a location.
Well, immensely. It's one of those things where I think from everyone who's just said, kind of, essentially, I completely agree with all of them. It is, the sense of familiarity here. And to go and sort of what Imogen said, it was incredibly, the word entrepreneurial. Everyone's here for a reason. They're here because they want to be here. And it's a case of, and everyone kind of came here maybe on their own or in a couple, not knowing anybody. So and the thing is, you can all relate to each other in that sense. You start from zero. Like I got to make, through business, I got to meet new business connections through. So like socially, personally, we got to meet new friends and make new friends. And it's incredibly how quickly you're accepted on both sides of that. And I think to really go on what Imogen said, it's an amazing thing when you go and knock on people's doors, even if it's physically or just through LinkedIn. I talk to my colleagues in the UK and people in LinkedIn, they go, oh yeah, I've kind of got LinkedIn. And here it's like, if you haven't got LinkedIn, you don't exist. And it's like, it's one of those things, it's such a powerful tool. And the thing is, people are just willing, incredibly high level senior executives are willing to talk to you. And I think, it's a refreshing and amazing thing. And I think particularly from the last year, you know, when the thing is, business is slow, but people just wanted to talk. They want, we were building these relationships and this sort of here as well as all over Asia, but people just wanted to find out what your insights are, what's going through here, which I think is an amazing thing. And I think that with it really is that, for me, that's what Hong Kong is. It sort of really is this hub. And yes, it's very small, it's very condensed, you know, there's still, but it's a case of this whole point is that, but it serves so much of Asia. And it's so connected to that. So yeah, it's one of those things that it's been, you know, an incredibly supportive thing, a supportive entity to me personally, to our business, and yeah, in a place that we call home.
Great. I mean, I've got a question that's just come in here, which I think, Doris, you might want to kick off on this. It's saying, could any of you shed some light on UK's presence in the innovative creative projects within the construction infrastructure market in Hong Kong? That's Chloe as well.
Well, I just give some examples of UK architecture companies that are located here in Hong Kong and doing some very innovative and interesting projects as well. For example, Zaha Hadid, they have an office here in Hong Kong, and they are doing wonderful projects here. They have done the Innovation Tower in the Hong Kong Poly U, beautiful building. And of course, now they are doing another one just next to my office, or our Invest Hong Kong office here in Hong Kong, the Second Mary Road, and which is another fascinating building. And other innovative projects. I recall there is this wonderful Wyndham Foster project that has happened in our MTR, our subway. And you can imagine Hong Kong every day we commute, and subway is very important. But sometimes I find commuting in a subway a bit boring in a way. We have a lot of advertisement there. But when one day I saw Wyndham Foster, they have converted the Wan Chai MTR station in a beautiful way with ballet street on the street, and even our colleagues has participated in this huge shooting experiment and transformed the MTR into something artistic. Can you imagine? I think it might be different, of course, in the UK. The tube sometimes can be very artistic with a lot of performers there, well, street performer. But in Hong Kong, certainly, in a very busy day, you see some beautiful photographs and beautiful display in the MTR with all sorts of wonderful movement. And that's a UK project. It's beautiful, really. So we have a lot, even though we are small, I always say, yes, they're small, but a lot of creative companies use Hong Kong as a regional hub. And there are wonderful projects happening in the region, but there are also interesting projects that are happening in Hong Kong. And that collaboration with Wynn and Foster is with the Hong Kong Ballet. It's beautiful. You want to come and see it, do that in the Wan Chai station.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much indeed. Imogen, I'm going to ask you a quick question now. Are there any fundamental differences in behaviour between Hong Kong, Asia, and the UK? And has this, forced you to adapt the way that you and Anthony had done business before?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we really had to look at our value proposition. If you think about it being based around long-running television drama, that means very different things to the UK and Hong Kong. And so where we used sort of language that was very much around sort of episode plans and episodes and seasons, to create that sense that you're captured in this long-running drama that you want to keep watching or being a part of. That didn't necessarily transfer across to Hong Kong. So for example, when we're talking in sort of proposals or pitches, we sort of remove some of the story language in Hong Kong. So we talk in more traditional language about communication strategy or change management. And then we can move into the story, sort of the immersive process once people have signed up for that. So it was about sort of adapting how we talked about ourselves to make it more accessible in Hong Kong, and then sort of moving into that creative language once people had sort of bought into the idea of what we were trying to achieve. So we talk, as I said, in sort of traditional terms, and then a lot of what we talk about is the science of story and character development in terms of brand personality and storylines and big strategic themes. And we were finding that wasn't necessarily resonating in the way that we wanted to. So we sort of took a decision to be a bit more conservative in Hong Kong, which has worked really well. And as I said, we sort of move on from there to sort of talking that more in that story language once we're sort of working with a client.
Great. I mean, that leads me on to my next point, which I was going to direct to Phil. I mean, this sort of adoption and adaptation between markets. The UK is an incredibly fertile and innovative, creative market. How accepting has Asia been to your level of creativity, particularly?
Yeah, good question, Andrew. I'd probably flip that a little bit and say, actually, we're the technology that enables the creativity in Hong Kong. So our software platform enables technology to do the work for a creative, as opposed to the creative hanging around trying to make the technology work.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Making a promise there, aren't I? But in that that's what we do. Is we'd like to say we democratize the workflow for virtual production. Without Disguise, it's very, very difficult to be able to deliver a green screen replacement environment. We have, permanent XR stages, which are these LED volumes that, in Hong Kong, we've delivered yoga. Well, not we, our partner actually, Notion XR, have delivered yoga classes, for example. So on an LED stage, rather than a green screen, very immersive and really different for people to experience. So of course, that's all local creativity, just using our technology, if that makes sense.
So yeah, you're providing the tools to allow creativity to explode, in a different direction that they would have done previously.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a great, statement for the technology of the UK. Talking of technology, Adrian, data analytics. So I see UK and other parts of, say, North America maybe being further ahead. Do you think in this field, do you think that Asia will catch up and will catch up quickly?
First of all, I think the UK is ahead of Asian markets in data analytics, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Certainly in its use of data, you'd think if you believed what you read that Asia would be far in advance, because I think there's a lot of stories about use of data science and AI, but it's not necessarily in the e-commerce sector, which is where we're playing. We find that the majority of, say, grassroots Asian companies are still quite old school in their attitude towards the online channel. UK shoppers, I think, are digitally more mature than almost any other market in the world. If you look at digital markets overall, you'd see that China is the biggest, but then also they've got 1.3 billion people. So on a per capita basis, when you rescale things, then the UK actually spends as much per capita in a year as they do in America. So UK shoppers are pretty trusting of the digital channel. They spend a lot of money. They spend apparently $2,500 a year online on average per person. And as a result of that, UK companies pretty quickly realized that digital is the only game in town for them. A lot of retailers are trying to rationalize their high street presence, and they're switching to online. So if you're in the business of serving the UK market as an agency, as a consultancy, as a tech company, then you've got some customers that are doing some pretty advanced things globally already. And when you go out to Asia Pacific, in some ways you're showing local companies what the future looks like. And I'd say right now we're probably, in terms of maturity, about 4 to 5 years ahead of overall what the Asian companies are doing. So you can roll out a roadmap and say, you want to get to this place in the future, this is how you do it. It won't take you 5 years to get there, it'll take you a couple of years. Will they overtake us? Well, it depends, I think, very much on whether the mainland Chinese model becomes the go-to model for the other Asian markets. It's a very, very different model from the one that we're used to in the West. Certain Western platforms like Amazon, for example, Google, are outlawed you can't get access to them in China. So they use WeChat, Weibo, they use Tmall. They have this other closed wall environments that we as Western agencies don't really have a lot of experience of dealing with. And their use of data is different. There's a lot less first party data to be used. So it is very different. It will, if that becomes the model for the rest of Asia, then they may progress in ways that we haven't seen before. But right now we have an advantage, and I think because of the amount of money that's spent in Western markets on digital, I think we'll maintain that advantage for the foreseeable future.
Great. It's good to know. I mean, I've got a question for you, because everything that the other three panelists have said, Oliver, leads me to this question about talent. The creativity needs this talent. So do you see, I know it's 7 million people, but do you see Hong Kong as able to fulfill that demand for talent?
No, definitely, absolutely. As I mentioned before, it really is, it's a hub, and I think it's got a calling to a lot of, sort of different creative industries and people within that. It's there's a massive multicultural society, so for very many different sectors. And, even just take us example, obviously there's Hong Kong, and talk about Hong Kong, but, obviously we're servicing clients in Thailand, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Macau. So very much so, I think it's a case of, there's an immense amount of talent here. And it's sort of, and it's a fantastic thing. I think it's, particularly in certain sectors, particularly hospitality, there's we can see here, obviously it's a huge, it's big growth. Markets happen, obviously there's a lot, for me is the thing, I would say we're obviously very much F&B focused, but for interior design, there's an incredible amount of competitors here locally. It's for the size of it, there is any. And it's extremely high talent, with very, in our, sort of world, it's when you look at likes of Joyce Wang, Stephen Leung, Andre Fu, they're massive players that have come from Hong Kong, and they are working all over the world. They're names that you can drop in most places and they know. So I think, it's this place of where it's known for, Hong Kong is known for creativity. And I think all of this inspires a lot of, future generations to want to get into creativity and be more creative.
Yeah, I realise that we're running very short of time, and I've had another couple of questions. There's one about the GBA and help for British companies and companies established in Hong Kong who want guidance. So I've typed in an answer and pointed them at you, Doris. Chloe, you might also want to think about this with UK companies, signposting them into the GBA. I also had another question about, should it be going into China? Should you be an office in Beijing or Shanghai or Hong Kong? Where is the right place? I will have to deal with that one later, I think. But just before we wrap up, there was just a quick question. We've got COP26 in the UK later this year in November, and is climate change, or does that ever raise its, the topic come up in the businesses that you're in? I mean, there are different elements of that. Imogen, does climate change feature in anything that you're dealing with?
Yeah, it's a good question, and actually, in the last few years, we've really seen an interest in the ESG story, and sort of people bringing us into the business to really understand how they can embed different behaviours, over the long term, rather than just sort of talking about it in a snapshot. So I guess for us, yes, a lot of it, and we work with a lot of investor relations teams as well, and they're obviously talking more about sustainability to their investors. So it's coming through in the stories and the storytelling that we do, which I think is a brilliant thing.
And Oliver, I suspect the whole thing about sustainability comes up in your design work.
No, very much so. Obviously, it's a thing which we can't really ignore now, and I think it's one of the things that is so vital. I think with I'd say the biggest thing is that we have a lot of clients talking to us about sustainability, but the reality is that it requires a lot of financial commitment to that. It's not a cost-effective way to do something. A lot of sustainability methods. There's things that you can do it on the surface, but to really get into it, the technology's there. It's still growing immensely, but it is, it's sort of the financial commitment is quite great. So it's about really, on our part, as I'm sure a lot of the panel would agree, it's a case of our responsibility is to help educate our clients into this and help them understand that it's the long-term part there. And we do a lot of business strategy with our clients. It's far more than design. We really want to understand, their business, the commercial goals, their strategy, budgeting, all of this, so we can work this into it. Because at the end of the day, from our point of view, it has to be profitable. These are businesses. It needs to look great, but if it's not profitable, it's a failure. So I think that's where we really look to. We always will try and implement this sustainability part, and really help educate clients about how they can contribute, whatever scale it needs to be, however they feel comfortable, but having that in there, sort of just just be able to contribute that, and for future planning.
Phil, from Disguise, I mean, in some ways you're helping because you're making, rather than large rooms full of people, you can do stuff online, which in theory I suspect is more sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about that question. There's two parts to it, isn't there? There's what our technology can do to raise the profile and communicate awareness for environmental issues, and actually we've got a huge amount of projects that we've been involved in for exactly that, projecting 50-foot polar bears onto the side of buildings and all sorts we've been involved in. But enough of that for now. But likewise, our own manufacturing processes and the amount of travel we do. The world must have got a bit healthier last year because we all stopped traveling, didn't we? But using our cars. And I think we proved to ourselves that, that sort of element of carbon footprint is something that is at the forefront of our mind. We've proven what we can do, but also the fact that we have got a presence in Hong Kong, and we've now got a presence in Australia, and some of these further reaching places from London means that, we can save on that carbon footprint by not doing the travel we would have otherwise done when we didn't have Disguise representatives in those regions.
Yeah. Adrian, from your side, analytics.
Yeah, I'll be honest. The closest we come to it is helping our clients understand whether a message around a greener message is actually having any resonance or impact with their audiences. So we look at the content that they're producing to promote themselves, and help them to perhaps to change their products and swing it in the direction of a greener product. But directly, we don't have a massive impact on. We don't have an impact on the environment anyway. We don't, our services are provided remotely, and we deal with data, so there's not an awful lot of carbon footprint in our business model. I'm very pleased to say, but nor do we really help our customers reduce their carbon footprint either. So I wish there was a way that we could.
Yes, well, it's a comment just popped up there saying about travel, the need to travel so much. Is there really the need? But of course, one of the things talking to clients like yourselves, of course, the personal relationships are very hard to do via Zoom or Teams and things like that. So I still think that there will be a return to travel. I'm sure, Adrian and Phil, who are in the UK, you will think about, the great opportunity of being able to go out and go to a restaurant or a bar in Hong Kong and have a nice night out there. But I realise we're way over time now, so, and the audience have, and I'm sure you guys have better things to do, but I'd like to thank you all very, very much, and I'm going to hand over now to Emily, and don't turn your cameras off. Emily, over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you to all of our fantastic speakers for joining us today. I thought it was a very interesting discussion and appreciate you all sharing your insights with us and your learnings. Thank you as well to all of the participants for joining. We hope you had a great session. Feel free to get in touch with us if you do have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.